What's up, y'all? It's Sarah Kate here with Billy Scott with Billy Scott Real Estate, back for another podcast session. We're talking about sellers today, the secrets of selling, everything sellers. And it's all the things that you want to know that you really want to ask an agent, but when you talk to an agent and then they want you to work with them, so then you end up not talking to them. Well, now I'm going to ask Billy all your questions so that you just get to sit in the comfort of your home and you get all the information. So, little disclaimer. A lot of things you're going to hear from Billy and I are, even outside of this episode, are our opinion on things based on our experience, based on people we've talked to, based on where we get our information from. So always take things with a grain of salt. Always do your own research. Always talk to, other people before just taking things for matter of fact. So, but we're excited to share some value with everybody.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. We're going to start kind of actually at a point in your life that I feel not a lot of people, especially agents, talk about.
Okay.
At least I don't hear them talk about. I shouldn't say they never talk about it, but I don't usually hear them talk about it. But what your experience was when you first bought and sold before you were an agent, when you were just like the rest of us and didn't really know a lot. What was that like for you? And how has that made you a better agent for your clients now?
Okay. Well, so I think of buying my first home with my buddy Joel. We went in on it together, and that was one of those times where we knew we were making decent money, but we couldn't do it on our own. So we thought, man, on this uptick of the economy, like, it's so easy. We've read it in a book. We've heard about it. You just buy the house, and in 2 years, you're going to sell it, and you're going to be rich. Mm-hmm. Well, 2 years later, the 2008 crash happened. We were far from rich, and the home value compared to what we owed, there was a big gap for how much we owed.
Oh, yeah.
We were upside down like $30,000+ in 2 years. And we also bought the home on a 5-year interest only, because what's it matter? It just keeps our payment smaller, and we're just going to flip it in 2 years, and it's going to make so much money.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, for people who might not know, what is that?
To flip it in 2 years?
No, the interest that you were talking about.
So interest only is, so your first 5 years of a 30-year loan, you pay interest only. So you're not paying towards your principal. So you're just paying interest. So instead of, property, insurance, taxes, all of it, like, you're only paying interest, plus you still pay your property taxes on top of that, but you're not paying any principal to your mortgage. So, for example, on that home, I think we bought it for around $230, if I recall, and it was worth less than $200 2 years later, and we're like, so now what do we do?
Yeah.
Like, well, it was kind of like, well, we were going to sell it in 2 years, cash in. Well, reality hit. We're upside down. We're going, okay, so if we walked away right now from the house, nobody wants, a foreclosure on their record. So it's like, if we walk away right now, or if we sold it right now, and let's say we sold it for $200, we'd still have to come up with $30,000 cash.
Yeah.
To pay the difference to settle the mortgage debt,
right?
Because they'd have nothing else to lean to get their money.
Yeah.
And we just kind of scratched our head like, oh my gosh. And I was 22. Yeah, we were both 22 years old.
You're 22?
22 when we bought our first home, yeah.
And then went backwards on it.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we never thought about the what if.
Right.
On the negative side, it's just think positive.
Yeah.
Think about the money we're going to make. We're going to invest in this home, and we're going to have tax write-offs. Yeah. So we met with an agent, and we talked to them, and we're like, how can we utilize this to our benefit? And they said, oh, yeah, well, if you buy this home, you could also write off all your closing costs. So we were talking about how we were going to write the offer, and the home been on the market for 4 to 6 months, something like that. So it'd been on the market a while, and we said, well, we want to be able to write off on our taxes because we're both making decent money. Like we need more write-offs,
Yeah.
not realizing that write-offs are great, but you still got to pay the money to be able to write it off. And
Yep.
you're only writing off, you're only getting a portion of that write-off, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
use 25% to a third, like just think of it that way. So it's like if you paid $10,000 in closing costs, you may only get a $2,500 to $3,500 benefit. So it's not like tit for tat.
Right.
Little did we know, like as we learned through it, we're like, oh yeah, we want to take closing costs. We're just thinking write-offs.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
lesson learned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Needs to be the right time and place. The other thing that took place was the home was listed at around, I think, 235. And we had talked to our agent, and she's like, so what do you think you want to purchase for? And what do you think your offer is going to be? And we were talking somewhere in the range of like 210. And she just absolutely was not having it. And she's like, oh my gosh, no way. Like nobody would ever accept this. This is like a $20,000, $25,000 difference. Like, and we're like, well, it's been on the market for a while. Like we're kind of looking at it as we're new. We've never done this. But we didn't think it was too terrible. Like we knew it was a lower offer, but you wanted to try, right?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like you get a lot of emotions involved. Like you're excited, you want to buy, like it's going to work out perfect. And we weren't really worried about the risk. It was just like, no, we can do this. Like let's just move forward. This is a no-brainer. We're gonna go do it, and it's a good decision at a young age. Buy a house.
Yeah.
Well, she advised us to write an offer like at 220 to 225, somewhere in there. And with closing costs and everything else, it was like 230 plus. So it just not much of a discount. She's like, no. We got to write it like really close to the asking price. And I just felt like if we're the buyers, we get to decide what we write it for. Now I understand like it's got to be a respectful offer, or else the seller's going to have emotions involved and just be like, piss off.
Yeah.
But part of that is the agent having a conversation with the selling agent to say, hey, what are some things that your sellers need?
Yeah.
You know, I've got some potential buyers that are interested. What things line up with what your seller needs? Because I think it's very valuable now being an agent, being able to find win-win situations and understanding what the other party needs, whether you're the buyer's agent or the seller's agent.
Yeah.
Same situation like when you represent both parties. Like the goals and the outcome has to align.
Yeah.
But if you're only worried about one side and don't care anything about the other side, that's the fastest way for deals to fall apart.
Right.
That's where emotions get involved. Somebody feels like they're getting the short end of the stick or whatever it may be. So it's kind of a line that you want to be really clear if you are going to represent both sides. So jumping into that.
Well, I'm going to interrupt.
Go ahead.
So this is something, right? Like, I feel like in any field, it's like, how do we empower people to be able to speak up, right? Especially in like, you didn't know what you didn't know, right? You're trusting a professional.
Yep.
And with that kind of comes risk where you're like, I'm going to trust them.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that with your own clients of like, I want you to speak up. I want you to voice your opinion, but also I want you to trust me because sometimes I do know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like, because from what you're saying, I hear like, you're like, yeah, well, I just trusted the agent, even though looking back now, I'm like, well, I really didn't get that good of a deal, you know, like knowing what you know now, would you have handled your deal differently?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for one, I would advise if I were my first agent, I would advise us of you can offer that price, but here's the other comps in the area that show the asking price of this house is right in line. Like maybe it's just a touch on the top end of today's market.
Right.
but comps are supposed to be sold data
Mm.
in the area
Yes.
within a few month range
Yeah.
that's fresh, that says this is today's value. You know, and each property is a little unique. You got some positives and some negatives to each one. But if you're in a subdivision and you got 200 cookie cutter houses, you've got a pretty streamlined process where it's like, all right, this is a pretty close range of what this, 4-bed, 2.5 bath, 2,000 square foot home,
Yeah.
0.2 acre lot, like this is what they're going for in today's market.
Yeah.
So many sellers want to look at what an asking price is on a house.
Mm-hmm.
An asking price just lets you know what your competition is when you go on the market.
Right.
Is an asking price tell you that somebody paid that price for it? No. Does an asking price mislead a lot of sellers? Yeah. Because Sarah, you see a house in your neighborhood, and let's say your house is around 400, and then all of a sudden you see this house for 450, very similar to yours, but yours is like a little nicer, and you're like,
Oh.
that's 450. I think ours is 475,
Yeah.
and then Jim Bob down the street sees that your house is 475 and theirs is a little nicer, and they think, well, ours is 500 to 525.
Mm-hmm.
All three of those houses aren't sitting on market comps
Right.
of sold data
Yeah.
of what a bank financed on, what they lend money on, what they justified for market value.
Yeah.
It's all on an emotional asking price, which was inflated on the first one, which then inflates the next one and inflates the next one
It's emotional comparison.
with no
Yeah.
facts or data
Yeah.
when we talk about comps of sold prices.
Yeah.
Sold homes tell the history.
Yeah.
So active is, hey, we're going on the market. These are the homes asking price in your neighborhood.
And did you get that when you were buying?
No.
Okay.
No. So that's something that I think I could do a better job of, is making sure when we go to write a lowball offer, let's just say, okay, we'll write the offer
Right.
if it makes sense, but I need to advise you, like, this is the market comps.
Yeah.
This is like where the home most likely will sell at.
Yeah.
This is the number where you want to be, and then this is their asking price.
Yeah.
So what are we doing to justify a lowball offer besides we want more for less? Because everybody wants more for less. That's okay. But our delivery is going to dictate our response.
Yes.
So if somebody wants to come at it and just say, all right, so for that $450,000 house that's overpriced already, I want to offer $375. And it's like, where's that number coming from?
Yeah.
It's like, I just want to offer $375. That's what it's worth to me. I don't care what it's worth to them. It's like, okay, well, this is when you start getting emotions involved, and
Yeah.
it kind of muddies the water a little
Yeah.
bit. And then me as a buyer's agent, I would want to call that seller and say, hey, I got a buyer that doesn't see the value in your home based on your current asking price. How's your client's situation? Are they need to get out from it, sooner than later? Like where are some
All
of
in
your
how
comps?
you handle it.
Totally.
Yeah. And so really you didn't know. And I think a lot of times it's hard because I think you do a really good job at wanting your clients to know you're advising them on what to do, but you fully empower them to decide and you're going to support it.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, unless it's unethical, we're not going to. But,
Right.
If they're like, no, we're lowballing 30 grand less. And it's like, okay, well, here's what I'll advise you on that. Right. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it is their decision. But yeah, it is hard when you, as a client, like you don't know what you don't know. Right.
Yeah.
Like it's not your field, really.
Yep.
So what happened after you bought? It was, 2008. You're like, oh my gosh.
Upside down.
Where did you go from there? How did you guys decide what to do?
Well, six, when we wrote our offer, we let a lot of our emotions do the talking. We really wanted to get in a house sooner than later. And we took her advice and wrote it for $225, $227, something like that, and paid all closing costs. and we had a signed offer in hours, like done.
Yeah.
Like, and it was like, oh, we just offered too much.
Yeah.
We let our emotions get involved, and it was just kind of like, well, I mean, maybe we didn't offer too much. Maybe it was just like close enough. It pleased the seller, and that's that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the taste I had in my mouth, was like, we wanted to offer less. She kept bumping it up of like, how about this? How about this? How about this?
Yeah.
I always tell buyers and sellers, like, you're in control. Like, I'm representing you. I'm going to advise you. I'm going to give you perspectives.
Right.
I'm going to tell you things that maybe you don't want to hear, but that you need to hear. Then we'll adjust accordingly and see how we want to go about it.
Yeah. Would you say as a buyer, like when you, I guess we're talking more about buyers right now.
Yeah.
But would you say as a buyer, when you put an offer on a house, should there be a negotiation back? Like, is that really what you want? Or is what your goal, what you're trying to get is like, we submit an offer and it gets accepted and there is no negotiating? Like, because in your experience, it's like, oh.
As a buyer, I think both sides, it's like you could look at both sides of the table. As a buyer, you're like, you want to come with your best offer, but typically there might be a little bit more wiggle room if we're close, you know, and price isn't the only thing. Terms within the contract really dictate making a deal come together.
Yeah.
The price obviously has to make sense, but all the different caveats within it really dictate a good offer or not.
Yeah.
So yes, from a seller standpoint, you want a strong enough offer where you're like, hey, is this close enough to where we can net what we need to net and walk away where we feel good about it, and we can get to our next, property that we're going to go buy? Great. Does this, the lines connect and we find a win-win for the buyer and seller and everybody's happy? Great.
Yeah.
Now, everybody anticipates some negotiation back and forth.
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to, as a seller, if you price your home correctly based on market data, not emotions, and you get it where there's a lot of interest in a short amount of time, you're going to get a great offer based on the value. And you're not going to sit around and chase the market for 4, 6, 9 months because you want to start so high to just, well, let's feel it out. And what happens when you start so high? You lose all that traction. In the first 2 weeks, you know if you're priced too high and you need to adjust. Maybe adjust marketing. Typically, 99% of the time, it's adjusting price. The marketing in today's world, once you get on an MLS platform and all the different social media platforms, if you're getting out there and getting that exposure, it's not the marketing, typically speaking. Everybody's marketing's different, but it's price that dictates the opportunity for that buyer to say, oh, that caught my eye. Oh, that looks like a decent value. Maybe it's a little high on the price, but I want to go see it.
Well, it's like, it's kind of like magazines and commercials and stuff for products. It's like, oh, that draws people in to want to see it. But as soon as they see the price tag, it determines if they want it or not. Right? It's not like, oh, well, it looks nice, so whatever it costs, it's fine. It's like, no, it has to pencil. It has to make sense. That's what's going to get your home sold. Absolutely. So what happened? You guys bought it. You guys are in the house. 2 years. Market tanks. I'm assuming you kept it. Didn't sell because 30 grand just forking it out wasn't really an option. So then how long did you guys live there?
So Joel and I were talking over that next couple of years, and I had over that time got married, had another baby on the way, my second child. So our paths were kind of not totally aligning with, I was raising a family. I already had my young daughter, and it was just kind of like, well, we kind of talked about it. Like, does Joel want to keep it and I walk away? Do I want to keep it and he walk away? Like, what makes sense? And we're both like, well, we don't have the money to just pay to walk away. So I was like, well, if one of us walks away and the other one stays, we're going to have to get it refinanced by that 5 year before our mortgage starts raising in price. And I think our interest rate was just under 7. So right at the market average, today's average over 50 plus years, something like that. So, but '08 happened and just scared everybody. You got all these houses on the market that are sitting and not selling. And just even if you asked, even if you tried to sell your house, that doesn't mean it was going to sell.
Right.
So we ended up agreeing, and Joel moved on and bought another house eventually, and raising his family there and investing. And I stayed and refinanced the house by the 5-year mark, and ended up locking it in, and we stayed there 10 years total. So my wife and I, and we loved it. Like, we did a lot of upgrades to the house. Joel and I did a lot of upgrades the first couple of years with doing the patio and doing a retaining wall and, fence, and just making it more of an appealing entertainment space kind of thing for the backyard, and sprinkler system, and just doing things like that up your home's value.
Yeah.
But after 10 years and selling it, I think we sold it around 275, 280, something like that in 2016.
Yeah.
Like, barely walked away with 50 grand after 10 years.
Wow.
Because we bought in such a tough market.
Yeah.
We weren't strong on negotiating the price in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's something that I learned was you can renegotiate your rate. You can't renegotiate your price.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot of people hate the terms like date the rate, marry the home.
Right.
Well, there's truth to it in a sense of like, you can adjust the interest rate.
Right.
Doesn't mean, in 1 year you're going to refi.
Right.
Well, you never know. It's all based on market.
Yep.
But it's got to make sense for you financially.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a lesson learned. But then we sold it, and nobody would accept our offer. Like, we were looking for property. We wanted to raise farm animals. We wanted our kids involved in 4-H and have all their 4-H projects at home. And luckily, we were thankful for families that had allowed our kids to raise lambs or hogs on their property. So, like, when you go visit them, it's a lot of times, hey, you got 30 minutes, like, clean their pen, feed them, walk them, build a relationship, get close with them. Well, you can't do all that in 30 minutes.
No.
And they weren't having that same bond a few days a week with their animal like they would if it's on your own place. And my wife and I just decided, it's like, she was always raised, raising cattle growing up out of Junction City. And I never lived in the country. I grew up in town all my life. I didn't know what farm life was.
Yeah.
So nobody would accept our offers that we'd make on properties. And they're like, oh, you got to sell your home? Like, yeah, but it's, we're ready to put it up on the market. They're like, call us when your home's sold.
Yeah.
We don't want to wait because of the fallout rate.
Right.
And it just finally, it was like, nobody's going to allow us to find that next step for us to sell this.
Yeah.
So when I hear sellers say like, oh my gosh, I don't want to sell my home until I find the next one. Well, here's the downside to it.
Right.
Rarely do people want to work with you as much if you're a contingent to sell offer.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of moving parts. It's more risk, higher chance of fallout.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if you're going to be a contingent offer, make sure that your home's on the market and or under contract and you've got a closing date set. Now you're showing like you're a strong contingent offer. Like, when this is closing and this will close simultaneously following, we're good. Not that can't fall out and change, but that holds a lot more value than, well, I'm going to put my home up on the market in the next 2 weeks if you accept my offer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Average days on market is, 2, 3, 4 months, depending on when it is.
Yeah.
And you're not even on the market yet.
Yeah.
Like, as a seller, you're going, I ain't waiting for them. No.
It's so hard. It's so hard to figure out, like, based on people's timelines and their needs and what they want and the market, what essentially the wisest thing for them to do is. Because, we've had conversations with sellers about like, well, we got to get you out of your house. We got to get you into a different house. We don't want to rush you into buying another property.
Yeah.
Right? We want you to find one that's not an emotionally driven, urgent decision.
Yep.
We want it to be because this is where you want to live, but we got to sell your house.
Yeah.
So we've talked to, you've really talked to sellers about that figuring out the in between. Can you rent somewhere? Is there somewhere that you can stay with family for a couple months so that you're not just like, well, whatever I find that kind of works in my price range, like we're just gonna buy it. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, because it's true. In 2 years, or in a year, you're gonna call Billy back and be like, I hate it, right?
Yep.
Because it makes such a difference, location and where you're at. And if you love it, you gotta love it.
Yeah.
You can't let the urgency or the fear, you know, it's a short-term sacrifice,
Yep.
right?
I kind of talk to clients about it and say, there was one last week that I spoke with and said, I know that you really want to get settled into your next place and sell this
Yeah.
simultaneously, but
Yeah.
the buyer is only going to wait for you to find that replacement property so long until they just say, I found something else.
Yeah.
And then it's going to take the wind out of your sails because you took too long, but also you didn't want to settle on your next property.
Yeah.
So it's like, don't let losing a battle to win a war get in the way, because if you find that transition property for 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be, to go, hey, I got a good price on my home, I'm going to sell it, then I'm going to know exactly what my net is when I walk away.
Yeah.
I'm going to know exactly what my buying power is, and I'm going to be patient, because my client was starting to feel like, well, I don't know, I just got to get something really quick. And I told her, I'm like, you're settling for what you don't want because you've got this time pressure.
Yes.
And you're going to be pissed and call me in 6 months, be like, I hate it here.
It's so true.
And it's like, some would look at me and go, Billy, you're talking your buyer out of buying.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, but I want this client for years to come,
Yeah.
and I want to help their friends and family. And I want them to know, like, we're all here to do a job for a living, but it's relationships, and it's that showing that you care. And if you know this is not what's going to make sense for your buyers,
Yeah.
my job is to say the things that they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And that was, you're settling because
Mhm.
you're getting impatient. Like,
Mhm.
you want small acreage out of town, and you're about to move an in-town lot to another lot in town. Like, what?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I know you're going to call me and be frustrated. Be like, why'd you let me go buy that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then you wouldn't have done your due diligence to the client.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So does it get in the way of closing more deals? Yes. But I know it'll always pay off in the long run, because if you look out for the benefit of the client,
Yeah.
the rest will follow.
It's those long-term relationships over the short-term commission.
Yep.
Right. It's why people don't want to work with agents a lot of time, because they just want, you're just a number. They just want to close another deal, and they just want their check.
Yep.
Right. Well, it's your decision. I just doing what you tell me. So if you say you want to go on that house, like, well, okay,
Yeah.
it's like, really, like, you're not really advising them. You know what they want. You know
Yeah.
they're being emotionally driven.
Yep.
Right. It's selfish to not speak up and tell them what they might not be aware of.
Yeah.
Right. Because in the end, you're doing it because you care.
Yep.
Not because you're trying to be the big bad wolf.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
But yeah, it makes it difficult. Well, so you sold 2015,
Till
when?
2016.
2016. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So talking about my selling experience. So we actually had our home on the market in the summer of 2015.
Okay.
And it was on the market 3-4 months. We ended up getting a buyer who was represented by our agent. So she double-sided, representing both sides, which can be a great option, but it can be muddy as well.
Yeah.
It's not always advised.
Yeah.
I heard a stat recently. It's like 80 to 90% of lawsuits regarding real estate usually involve an agent that's double-sided.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it may start out great, but one side always feels like the other got the better end of the deal.
Yeah.
So I've done double-sided deals.
Yeah.
I've also referred out
Yeah.
double-sided deals, because if I'm representing the seller and they just go, I really don't want you to represent the buyer. I want you just working for me and me only, and that's my fiduciary duty. Great.
Fair.
Then what I'll do is I'll take my buyer that was looking at buying and lean on a great agent that they're going to be able to work with, and try to work a deal where they can handle them. They're represented differently. I can focus my fiduciary duty on the seller.
Yeah.
are there times that we can do double-sided deals successfully and have that open conversation with buyers and sellers and just say, here's the thing, if I'm representing both sides, we're going to, put the money on the table kind of thing and talk about these are the things that you want. These are the things that you need as a seller. We're going to work through these things and try to find that common ground where we can find a win-win.
Yeah.
Because if we do not find win-win, the deals fall apart. They never hit the closing table. And all it does is waste time and money and create stress and emotions. And then the experience is not fun or memorable.
So was that your experience as a client with an agent who was representing both sides?
So I felt like we were going to accept a really low price and we weren't getting near where we wanted to be. But I understand the approach of like the longer days on the market says you need to take less because you don't have near the value in the home.
It's true.
Days on market is the demise of a listing going stale. And I cannot stress that enough to sellers.
Yeah.
And so many sellers, like in today's world, want to get the price that they heard in 2021 or 2022 in the peak of the market.
Yeah.
We're not there. The market's not there. So
they always hear you say that too, like days on market is the thief of your value. And I feel like they get it and they forget it. Because that's how we are as humans, right?
Yep.
In the moment when you're sitting there talking about all the theoretical stuff, it's like, okay, yep, that totally makes sense, right? Because they do. They want like they put their best thoughts forward in the sense of like, yep, I'm totally on board. We get it. Then once you actually list and the market shows like, hey, actually, we need to reduce price. Then it's like, but I mean, it's a bummer for everybody, including the agent, actually. Like, if we didn't have to reduce prices, we wouldn't.
And usually, like, based on data and comps, if you price the home appropriately and it's within the range of where, the market supports it, you'll know in that 2 weeks, you'll know if you're slightly high or really high. And before then, but sometimes the sellers don't see it until they see the results where nobody's knocking on our door. Nobody's setting up showings. We have no offers and barely anybody showed up to the open house. Well, why do you think that is?
Right.
Because your chance, it's like 98% chance they're going to see your property online before they ever drive by it. And
so true.
And if you've got one picture online and an opportunity in that property search, whether it's Zillow or Homes.com or Realtor.com, whatever it may be, or the search that your agent has set up for you and sending you properties that fit your parameters, you've got that split couple seconds of here's the first picture and the price. And if it doesn't strike your attention, we swipe on by. And it's gone. You've missed that opportunity. If they look at the picture and they see the price, they're like, oh, that's way too high. You don't even have a chance to reel them in and have them start looking at photos and start looking at the next 42 photos that they're going to see and they go, oh my gosh, this has a shop. Oh, this has a barn, or oh, this has some acreage, or this has an arena out back, or hey, maybe this has some timber on the property. And if you don't get that clickbait in a sense of that great photo. And the best way to do that is pay your photographer and your videographer to let them do what they do well and stop taking cell phone videos.
We're not Craigslisting houses here.
Stop cheaping out. I understand it's an investment as an agent that you go pay for photos and videos on behalf of your clients to sell the home. But you're paying other professionals to excel in what they do. There's other ways to save money.
Because the one time that I had you took cell phone pictures. Remember that of the of the house, and I was scrolling through the photos, and all of a sudden I'm like, "What is that?" And I look, Billy's in the corner like this, and you can see him in a mirror, and he's like taking pictures.
I was taking interior photos. And
I was like, "This is why we have a professional do this because if we do this, it's not going to be good."
And it doesn't mean like, well, what about for lower level listings? Do I just do cell phone photos? Like, no. you're working your tail off for your client. Give them the best representation possible and pay for the damn photos.
Amen.
And do the videos. People want to see videos.
Yeah.
You stop trying to save a few bucks.
Yeah.
Do the videos. Do the agent guided tours.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there. It'll market you better to be the face in the industry, not just don't just do enough to get by.
Right.
Separate yourself.
Yeah. You're doing a disservice not only to your clients, but actually to your own business.
Yep.
Right? The quality of the value which you provide.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
true. It hurts you as well.
Exactly.
So, okay. So going back.
Squirrel.
Can you tell we go on tangents? So much good stuff to talk about. Okay, going back. So you had an agent who was representing you on the house you were selling.
Yep.
It was dual-sided.
Yep.
What went wrong? What went right?
Okay. Yeah. So if I could stay focused on that, it was,
That's okay.
I want to say we wanted to be somewhere around 275, 280, and we were at like 250.
Mm-hmm.
And we went under contract. We agreed to it to just be like, let's just sell it. It's getting in the way of our next step. So sometimes it's like, okay, are we fighting over pennies here in a sense in the big picture because it's not allowing us to go find our next property?
Yep.
Yes, we're not going to walk away with as much money, but we've got to wash our hands of this so that we can go do, sacrifice now for the bigger picture later.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of sellers get caught up in like, nope, this is the number I need. It's like the number you need has nothing to do with market value.
Mm-hmm.
The number you need is emotionally driven.
Yeah.
That doesn't your needs
Which
don't
is validated,
dictate.
right?
Yeah.
What what people do need to walk away with is totally accurate.
Yep.
But it is hard because the market doesn't care what you need to walk away with.
Yep.
Right? It's not the agent, it's the market.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly. So it's a tough one. Like nobody wants to hear it. And homeowners know the value of their home better than anybody.
So true.
They've put sweat equity into it. They've invested financial money to better it. They've lived there for many years. They got many memories to share. Like it's home.
Yeah.
So it adds to that emotional price tag.
Yeah.
Like everybody's home's worth more than what the market says.
Yeah. And it's so hard because it's the timing of when you need to figuring out when to sell.
Yeah.
Right.
So we were under contract for 250. We were going to take less. It was her client, and everything that came up just kept reducing our price, just going to bat for our client, going to bat for the buyer. And it's like, man, we kind of felt like, is she looking out for us as well? We understand she's in a sticky situation where she's got to protect both sides. Right. And we just felt like, man, this is really hard to know, but it's not like they were being unrealistic. But it just felt like it was always take, and not give and take.
Right.
And give and take negotiations get so much more traction.
Yeah.
There's like, if you're on the other side of the table, how would you feel?
Right.
Give and take. Like if it's just take, like that's when people just get pissed off.
Yeah.
And then deals die. So it got to a point where the deal died. We didn't come to terms. We found out during the home inspection that we had a water leak on a window. It damaged some of our flooring. And then as they dug into it more, they're like, So it ended up being like $7,000 or $8,000 of
oh my gosh.
repairs. And we pulled it off the market. We're like, you know what? We're done. Like, we're going to reevaluate. So we ended up doing a homeowner's insurance claim. We upgraded some of the flooring. We fixed some of the water damage because we had a fish tank in the house the first few years there, and it had a really slow leak, and we didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough. And underneath the water, the damage showed once we years later.
Yeah.
And it's like, got it. So I kind of told myself, we're never having a fish tank again.
Cost me $8,000.
Yeah. If my grandson said, Grandpa, can I have a fish tank? I'd be like,
you're like, there's a pond.
Yeah, little buddy, you can have a fish tank. Let's be real.
At your mom's house.
Yeah. But no, so we ended up not extending our contract after the 6 months. And we thought, man, what's the best way we do this? And ended up just hiring a reduced, a cheap service that, sells homes for a reduced like $1,500 or something like that. Had them list the home. We got it under contract within a couple weeks. We did all the upgrades. We had the house ready. Like it was staged, ready to go. They literally did little, but they got it on the MLS. So like that's the service we paid for. But there was no marketing. There was no open houses, nothing like that. It's just you're going to get what you pay for. It's a discount service.
Can I ask why you didn't go back to that other agent?
I think we just felt like we were paying a lot of money to then just be take. And that's kind of the taste we had in our mouth. And it's like, man, and I didn't know at this time that, I'd want to be in real estate down the road, but it was one of those, like, I just felt like if I was ever in that situation, there's ways that could have been handled better or differently to make sure sellers and buyers both feel like, hey, is this reasonable?
Yeah.
Is this a reasonable, ask on a repair addendum, that kind of thing. And I felt like it was just one-sided.
Yeah. Which is fair. It's your experience. And, that's the other thing. Now, being on the agent side of things, we understand that everybody's learning and there's always things that as an agent you can do better. Right. And things that you might not even be aware of how a client's experiencing it. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm not asking to badmouth an agent. I'm genuinely asking because, like, you are able to see it in a way that not majority of people don't get to see it because you once were a client and now you're an agent. Right. And so you have a different lens for it. So you had taken house off the market, done the repairs, chosen not to go back with that other agent, which is totally okay, parted ways. And then you were basically paying for a service for somebody to just deal with the paperwork of selling your property. Okay.
Exactly.
How long did it take from when you relisted it for you to get an offer and get it accepted?
Within a couple weeks.
Okay.
And more at the price we wanted.
Yeah.
So, we felt it was a no-brainer. Like, it worked out. But it's not something I wouldn't have hired I don't think if the market wouldn't have been as good, I don't know that I would have went that route. There was a decent uptick in the market and our home showed really well. Like, we had it very decluttered, had everything in storage. Like, it looked like it was very professionally staged, ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
And priced to sell in a sense, and it did. So we were grateful for that with a pretty much a full price cash offer, which is the best offers.
Yes.
You want cash where you can close quickly. Like, you don't got to wait on an appraisal. Like, it just streamlined the process and went quick.
Yep.
So it was great. And we just believed in the system and we decided we're going to move into our camp trailer and went and stayed at our friend's house who reached out and said, hey, this is going to be a really good idea. I think about it now, like, if they go, man, if somebody's thinking about selling, don't ever let them. No, they were awesome. Dan and Tara were amazing to be able to take us in. And we never had to cook a meal in our camp trailer for the time we were there. Like, my wife and her communicated about dinners. My oldest daughter was in school with her twins. Like, they all were in the same grade. So that year was just a wild year to think about because I worked a ton at Knife. And they would communicate on dinners, hey, who's grabbing the kids or who's doing what, who's grabbing stuff for dinner that night. And they'd come in and it's like two families cooking dinner, BSing, having a good time, hanging out at night, wrapping up our days. And the bond that you build when you do that, there's times where they're just like, man, can the Scotts just like move out? Like, I get it. Like, you would feel that way with anybody. But I kind of talk a lot. Like, that doesn't help. But I mean, we had our dogs and, our two kids and my wife and I in the trailer. So, like, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
But I would do it again in a second if I knew it would have went as well as it did.
Mm.
Sacrificing to go live in a camp trailer, save your money
Mhm.
so that we could go put more money away for a bigger down payment to make a move on the next property. Hands down, best decision we ever made.
Yeah.
Thank goodness we did it with friends that we got to just build lifelong friendships with, and their kids, and the bond you have with them. And it could have went sour. It could have went another direction. We're thankful it didn't.
Right.
But once in a while, we'd go house sit at somebody's house for a week, and kind of they'd get a break, and we'd go watch somebody else's house for 4 or 5 days, or
Have long showers.
stay at a different campground or something for a few days or whatever it may be, kind of break it up a little bit. But it was just, we were very grateful that they took us in like their own when they didn't have to, and allowed us to stay on their property. And
Super sweet.
so when we sold our house, we did that, and within 2 weeks, we received an accepted offer on a pre-foreclosure property out in Kings Valley.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was wild.
Yeah.
But we took a risk, and it was a fixer-upper. Like, we went through that house a couple times before we finally rode on it, and it was just like, there's so much work to do to the land. Like, the home is just tore apart.
Yeah.
The front window was all boarded up, like, from being broken, and like, it was just outdated from the late 50s and just choppy. Like, the rooms didn't make sense. I mean, there was dry rot. There was just holes in walls. Like, just, it was annihilated.
Yeah.
Like, we joked that, should we have just took a bulldozer and just dump the house and light it up?
Was it really that bad?
It was that bad.
Wow.
It was that bad.
Wow. So why didn't you?
We couldn't afford to.
Okay.
That's the only reason why.
Yeah.
If we could have afforded to, we would have
would've.
just said, let's demolish it and do Highline Homes or something and have a custom built home.
Yeah.
But that financially, it wasn't an option.
Yeah.
So we literally we did a construction loan. So we bought the house. Did a construction loan. It was like $60,000 estimated cost to get it approved to be able to do our financing and everything else and make it work where, we're financing somewhere around like $350 with the construction loan. It was all said and done, but it was on 10 acres.
Yeah. Your land for all your cattle and
But
kids.
it had, a small barn. It wasn't pretty. I mean, it needed siding, roof, electrical, like the whole house needed remodeled. So it was like, oh my gosh, like this is such a big, this is a big deal for us. Like trying to find a way to make it work. And
so it wasn't like you bought something that you could just move into.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And buying a pre-foreclosure, we went under contract in June. We didn't close on it till the week after Christmas, right before the end of the year.
Yeah.
So you can't touch it. You can't start fixing it up for that time. So you're 6 months under contract. You're just playing the slow game.
Can't do anything.
The slow game to know that it's going to pay off.
Oh my gosh.
That's where Dan and Tara were like, let's get this thing moving.
Get them over there.
So finally, once we closed on it, then we could go work at the house after work and on the weekends and just have big weekend work parties, things like that. But another time we should talk about some of the things we did for financing and the upgrades and like how we did that 13-month journey. That'll be a session in itself.
Another podcast, the Fixer Upper podcast.
Yeah, exactly. What we did right and what we did wrong.
Yeah.
All
right, that'll be good.
So, what next question you got for me?
Well, anything else about that process that you feel like has made you a better agent that you draw from?
Good question. I think overall, I really think about it personally. If I'm going to represent both sides, that I bring clarity to buyers and sellers of like, this is the risk behind it.
Yeah.
This is what my ultimate goal is, to be very transparent. And sometimes you can't make everybody happy, no matter how hard you try.
So
that's been a struggle when things don't go as planned and emotions get involved, because we're dealing with some of the biggest financial decisions of people's lives.
Yeah.
And it's a hard line to walk to represent both sides, and making sure that they're both a part of your fiduciary duty. And if you see red flags of it going south or high emotions before you even do it, I would advise have somebody else represent one side and you just focus on the other. And just, even though you may lose a buyer that you were helping, it's not going to be worth it if it goes sour and relationships are burnt, and it could go to court. It could become a civil matter. Like, you just want to have clean lines. And I think there's a time and a place to go, hey, if your gut's saying abort and just let's do one side, then do that.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get stuck wasting all your time dealing with attorneys and small claims and all the BS that comes with it that are usually due to emotions.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap up part 1 of this conversation about sellers. We got to hear about Billy's journey of really him buying and selling just as a normal person like the rest of us before he was licensed. So the next episode that you're going to go watch is going to be part 2 of me just speed running some questions. A lot of questions that sellers and different people have, and we're going to get some answers from Mr. Billy Scott.
Wait a minute. When you say speed running, you never told me I was running anywhere. I didn't agree to this.
Sorry. We're trying to get your jaw cardio in.
This baby works like a champ, man. I don't know about this.
Sounds good.